Also, Charlie, this one I had imagined to address in the conclusions.
Absolutely.
When we say like, here's already an example of a partnership that's under development. We would like to see working with the South-South Cooperation Secretariat to put that in.
Yeah, why not join together? And we have a whole stack of those ready for this. Hey, Elizabeth. How are you doing?
Can't complain.
Good.
Hello. Elizabeth Merma.
Okay.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Don't you get a handshake?
No, you don't need. Oh, you don't deserve.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to this Solution Forum number 5, Environment and Poverty Eradication. This forum is organized by United Nations Development Program with the support of our long-term partnership with United Nations Environment Program and also with JACA and with our country partners from the South countries, including Burkina Faso, El Salvador, India, Kenya, Nepal, Rwanda. So today we will talk about it is better to do development, it is possible to do development better by scaling up proven solutions for poverty eradication and environmental sustainability. I take the honor to invite the resident coordinator of United Nations System and UNDP resident representative in Kenya, Madam Nados Bakale Thomas, to give the opening remarks.
Thank you so much. It's been a very hectic day running from one to the other, so sorry for the delay. But anyway, I'm here now. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of UNDP Kenya, and indeed on behalf of the whole entire UN country team in Kenya, I feel honored to be with you all on this very special, useful, and significant event. From the presentations and the educative exhibitions that we have seen here during the past couple of days, there are valuable reminders of the role that South-South and triangular cooperation plays in providing solutions to poverty eradication and sustainable environment management in developing countries. South to South and triangular cooperation, which have emerged as vital elements of the global development cooperation architecture, complementary to the traditional North-South model, are set to assume even greater volume and importance in the future, especially when it comes to sustainable development. Southern partners are looking to better engage in the global policy processes to share and benefit from the rich and diverse knowledge and experiences among themselves, as well as with the North, on scalable development solutions, particularly in the areas of sustainable development and poverty eradication. In this context, this Expo takes place in the background of the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, the Rio Plus 20, held in June last year. The Expo's theme is Towards a Green Economy, Pathways to Sustainable Development and Poverty Eradication. This theme will be concretized through our discussion today at the UNDP-hosted Solutions Forum. This forum will zoom into the poverty environment linkages and share with you concrete solutions of how to do development better by scaling up Southern solutions for poverty eradication and sustainable environment management. This builds on the encouraging signs and results of many initiatives around the world. A number of such results come from developing countries and illustrate the positive benefits from specific sustainable investments and policies that, if scaled up and integrated into a comprehensive strategy, could offer an alternative development path, one that is pro-growth, one that is pro-growth, pro-environment, pro-jobs, and pro-poor. Recent developments also illustrate the growing interest in seizing opportunities to move to a green economy. As the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon recently noted, I quote, "We have witnessed three economic transformations in the past century. First came the Industrial Revolution, then the Technology Revolution, then our modern era of globalization. We stand at the threshold of another great change, the age of green economics." End of quotation. Environmental conditions and access to natural resources and other environmental goods and services are closely linked to the livelihoods, health, and vulnerability of people living in poverty, particularly women and children. Improving the poor people's access to environmental assets can generate strong returns for poverty reduction, contribute to pro-poor growth, and accelerate progress towards attaining the Millennium Development Goals. At UNDP, we are committed to working collaboratively with our sister organizations and partners to support a global transition towards a more sustainable future. Sustainable development is an objective for the developing and developed worlds alike. The role of the UN development system is to support developing countries making that transition by helping mobilize knowledge, expertise, and resources. One such initiative is the Poverty Environment Initiative of the United Nations Development Programme and the United Nations Environment Programme, a global program that supports country-led efforts to mainstream poverty environment linkages into national development and sub-national development planning. As we call it, the Poverty Environment Initiative, PEI, assists government decision makers and a wide range of other stakeholders to manage the environment in a way that improves livelihoods and leads to sustainable growth. Many other examples to be discussed at the Solutions Forum hosted by UNDP today will also demonstrate how local government, private sector, civil societies, international partners can work together to promote access to renewable energy and sustainable forestry management. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, technology can be a powerful solution for simultaneously addressing environmental sustainability and advancing development. If the process of technology development, diffusion, and transfer is designed and implemented effectively, it will generate significant opportunities to address environment and promote sustainable innovation-based growth. As such, choices we make on technology selection and investments will have profound and long-term impacts on our societies. Many of the technologies and practices for adapting to and mitigating climate change are well suited to the needs of development in its broadest sense. Indeed, those concerned with adaptation, such as the protection of water resources, maintaining and improving output in agriculture, providing safeguards against changes in weather patterns, etc., are becoming a requirement of sustainable development. Currently, 2 Government of Kenya officials are in Beijing, China, attending an agricultural technical extension and good practices training organized through the UNDP China office. UNDP Kenya has been working closely with the government of Kenya, the private sector, the NGOs, the CBOs, to move the green economy agenda forward through a variety of projects. Notable UNDP ongoing initiatives include the Standards and Labeling Program implemented by the Ministry of Industrialization in partnership with the Global Environment Facility, designed to remove barriers to make transformation of energy-efficient productions and services in Kenya, with the aim of reducing energy-related carbon dioxide emissions in the country and eventually in the East African countries. Most of these technologies are currently being exhibited in this Expo. The market transformation for highly efficient biomass stoves for institution and medium-scale enterprises in Kenya promoted use of energy-saving cook stoves for institutions and SMEs. These stoves increase the efficiency of biomass used for cooking by 70%. The project also provided free tree seedlings to institutions that purchased the stoves. In 2 years, the institutions were able to save enough from energy consumption to cater for the cost of the cook stoves purchased. The uptake of the stoves has especially been high in secondary schools and primary boarding schools and colleges. This project installed over 1,500 stoves in 725 schools. The provision of available, adequate, quality and affordable modern energy services plays a decisive role in poverty reduction and sustainable development. In general, we see off-grid energy sources having good potential to provide poor people with access to energy, while also offering new employment opportunities supported by microcredit and the capacity to build small enterprises. There is a global momentum on energy access. The UN Sustainable Energy for All is a UN Secretary General initiative bringing together governments, the private sector, and civil society to ensure universal energy access by 2030. In addition, there is a growing recognition of energy access in the post-2015 development dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, through this solution forum, participants will be able to share and analyze key challenges and opportunities in achieving poverty eradication while promoting sustainable development, especially through South-South and triangular cooperation. Now, we have a full agenda and an exciting panel of speakers ready to share more insights. So let me stop here. I wish all participants a successful deliberations. Remember also to create time to our Kenya and see what opportunities for collaboration and learning exist. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Bekele Thomas. Now, a brief introduction of myself. My name is Grace Wang. I'm the lead advisor on South-South cooperation in the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. As UNDP, we wish to promote South-South and triangular cooperation by playing a role as knowledge broker and capacity development builder. And we would also love to facilitate innovations and especially scalable Southern solutions together with partners to be able to achieve the vision of eradicate poverty and achieve sustainable development. So with that in mind, today's forum, we have 3 objectives. Number 1 is to enable participants to exchange initiatives that they believe have demonstrated positive impact on the ground. And number 2, we also would like to organize this as a dialogue on impact and strategies to move forward, to how to engage partners to be able to replicate those innovations and those solutions to various different development contexts. And number 3, we would like to organize this forum a little bit differently, that we not only discuss and talk about it, we also explore more concrete opportunities that we can take away from this solution forum and to still follow up to be able to foster partnership and programs in the future. So in order to achieve those objectives, today's forum is organized a little differently. You will see that we have 3 parts of this forum. We have chat show 1, focusing on the theme of mainstreaming poverty environment linkages into national and subnational development planning and budgeting. We will have also chat show 2, focusing on the topics of access to sustainable energy and energy efficiency, as well as social forestry, management of natural resources to benefit livelihood of communities. After these 2 chat shows, we have organized 4 solution exchange tables. So you will see that we have posters already stick on the wall. On that corner, it will be the solution exchange table for poverty environment initiative, and then in front of you is the solution exchange table for local economic development and how to integrate environmental and sustainable development issues into local economic development plans. And on that corner, you will see energy efficiency posters, both from Kenya and from India tea industry. So that is the corner for solution exchange on efficiency, energy efficiency topics. And then we have another table for social forestry solutions, and that is supported by our partner JACA. So after the chat show, we will invite you to go to any table of your interest to have more in-depth, detailed discussion and to explore possible concrete opportunities to work together on those subjects. So without overdue, let me hand over to Mr. Koen Tunen, Regional Coordinator of the Poverty Environment Initiative, to be the moderator for the chat show 1. I will leave to Mr. Tunen to introduce the distinguished discussant in his panel, and then to pose questions. We hope this will be a conversation rather than a presentation by presentation, because you already have the material distributed to you, and I see many of you already visited our booth in the exhibition floor, which we already explained and exhibited all the solutions. So it will be a question and dialogue kind of format. Koen, now over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Good afternoon. My name is Koen Tonen. I work for the Poverty Environment Initiative as the regional coordinator. As Grace mentioned, this session is going to be a bit more of a dialogue rather than presentations and questions from the audience. How do we do development different, and how do we foster South-South cooperation, and how do we as UN agencies and initiatives, how do we support such endeavors? Those are the key questions that we're trying to answer. So how do we do that today? We're going to listen to 4 examples of successful poverty environment mainstreaming, 3 of which have been supported by the Poverty Environment Initiative, the joint initiative between UNDP and UNEP. And then the particular questions that we're going to raise are what are the different tools and approaches that we have used in country to that led to the success of this Poverty Environment Initiative, of this Poverty Environment Mainstreaming Initiative. The second step we're going to try to make is, can we identify what is available in terms of capacities in the particular countries? And on the other hand, what is the demand for technical expertise and technical capacities that is needed from your countries, so that we can come to a bit of a demand and supply approach on this floor. Finally, we as supporting initiatives will then also raise the question, how can we best support? We'll explore that in a second, but not after. I've given the floor to Elizabeth Mrema, who works for UNEP as the Director for the Division of Environmental Policy Implementation. Elizabeth, if you would like to make your opening remarks on the stage, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Koen. Thank you, our partners, UNDP, on this Poverty and Environment Initiative. Mine are just few ways to put into context this collaboration initiative between UNEP, UNDP, as well as the countries for which they will share their experiences in mainstreaming poverty and environment in the planning processes, practically to be able then to respond to the questions which have been raised. As probably many of you will be aware, poverty environment mainstreaming has been an important endeavor, both to us in UNEP as well as UNDP. And over the last 10 years, both UNEP and UNDP have partnered together through joint programming on the relevance of environmental management and natural resource base for the development and poverty eradication. This collaboration culminated in the implementation of the joint initiative between UNEP and UNDP on poverty and environment, and this has been on since 2008. The Joint Poverty Environment Initiative is gaining more and more experience from around the world on the practice of poverty environment mainstreaming, the policy instruments and the tools that gather evidence on economic relevance of the natural resource base and environment for the national economy and development paths. Some of the major tools that the poverty and environment initiatives have helped to apply in the country projects include climate public expenditure and institutional review, public environmental expenditure review, economic valuation of natural resources, as well as institutional and capacity assessments. Some of the major lessons learned over the years are that environment in relation to poverty, eradication, and economic growth is a cross-cutting theme that needs to be addressed by all ministries and be integrated into national development plans, sector development plans, strategies, laws, regulations, to name just few. Working through ministries of planning or finance and in joint cooperation with ministries of environment, it has already proven to be quite a good vehicle for fostering poverty and environment mainstreaming in a cross-cutting fashion. And the same has been able to ensure that environmental management for the purpose of poverty eradication gets addressed in a holistic manner. And the examples which will be shared here will demonstrate how that holistic manner in this joint project has been fostered. Poverty and environment mainstreaming is the responsibility of us all. First and foremost, the national government authorities, but also us in UNEP, UNDP, our bilateral donors and partners, and even the Bretton Woods institutions such as the World Bank and many others. Just about 3 weeks ago, Poverty and Environment Initiative had a targeted meeting referred to as the Donor Steering Committee meeting, whereby poverty and environment mainstreaming was further recognized as a very much that it's linked with other international dialogues and debates going on currently. For instance, when we look at green economy, the follow-up to the Rio +20, Sustainable Development Goals, and post-2015, again to mention a few. So all these international dialogues also will respond to also our mainstreaming on environment and poverty. Poverty and Environment Initiative is increasingly sharing its lessons learned, and the best practices in this dialogue are envisaged, and we envisage to continue to do so, particularly with the experiences we have learned through a number of these country projects. Furthermore, for us in the UN, this project also demonstrates our working and delivering as one, our partnership, not just among the UN agencies alone, but also partnering with the countries and with the donors to demonstrate how we can create that partnership, especially as we continue this discussion on the triangular cooperation. With those few dates, without taking much time, of the best practices we'll want to hear, I just say thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Could I request the 3 questions to be displayed? Today's forum, I would like to introduce the panel very briefly. Allow me to do this very quickly, so in the sake of time, because we started a little bit late. Next to me is Mr. Rasmani Ouedraogo from Burkina Faso, who will share his experience, the Burkina Faso experience. Marie-Laetitia Boussokeye from Rwanda. We have Mr. Gopi Mainal from Nepal and Mr. Mario Martinez from El Salvador. Up on the screen you will see the 3 questions through which we would like to organize this session. I'm going to request the 4 participants to address these 3 questions very briefly, 3, maybe 4 minutes in the sake of time. The first question is really, what poverty environment mainstreaming tool or approach has been of most benefit to your country and why? And then the second is, in relation to this tool, what expertise and knowledge is available to export to other countries in the South? And what additional expertise and knowledge is needed from other countries to strengthen the application of the tools or the approach? This is really the demand and supply question that I was referring to earlier. How can the PEI and the UNDP Art Initiative help improve South-South cooperation on this tool or approach? Mr. Mario Martinez will present quickly also the Art Initiative as one of the examples that are non-PEI related, not supported by the PEI program, a separate initiative. I would like to open the floor. Perhaps we can start with the Burkina Faso experience. Mr. Rasmane, please go ahead.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone who invited us here to take part in this debate. I'd also like to thank the organizers of this panel. At the Burkina Faso level, we started this initiative in 2010. We did this in a very favorable context. We were elaborating a strategy for accelerated growth and development. We had a strategy for combating poverty, which showed that the economy was growing at 5% and that poverty was being eradicated. Then we reviewed our sectoral policies, and after that we had the floods in 2009, which really brought to the fore the need to preserve the environment. And thus we integrated the program. The tool which we wanted to develop was the following. We wanted to align ourselves with the sectoral policies, which were fairly general. And thus we proposed coming up with handbooks for poverty environment initiatives for the various sectors. But for this document to be accepted, we had to convince people to take part in the economic studies which we wanted to undertake, because the ministry wanted to know what could be contributed. And it was shown that the environment could contribute up to 6.8% of GDP. And environment degradation was estimated at $1.7 million, which made up half of the aid received. This, of course, had an impact on the health of our population. Out of every $100, over $30 were spent on health issues. And there were also inefficiencies linked to problems with energy, which also amounted to $40. And all of this convinced people working in the Ministry of Economy and Finance that it was necessary to work on this. Thus we came up with an accelerated strategy for growth and development, which took into account the need for sustainable consumption, the need for greening jobs. And the accelerated growth strategy introduced environmental initiatives, which are very important tools. In the meantime, we also built up our capacities. We visited Mauritius and Senegal. What we did is we continued elaborating these tools and mainstreaming them into national policies. We had a participatory approach, and we came up with several projects, such as a project for consolidating environmental governance. And using our tools, development plans were developed. Emerging themes in these handbooks, which were revised. In fact, I commissioned these handbooks. And themes such as climate change were taken into account, gender equality, fighting natural disasters, and other issues were taken into account into these handbooks. But we had to move forward, and we had to keep developing other tools, such as various development indicators. Mainstreaming was undertaken, and these handbooks are now being finished. What's important is also the National Investment Plan, which allowed us to figure out what investments we needed to carry out in Burkina Faso for sustainable development. We needed to figure out how much the state would contribute, how much local partners would contribute. Now I'd like to touch upon the experience which we undertook. We have study officers which have now become experts in the field. There was also the private sector. What we found is that the private sector is increasingly well equipped to move forward with these kinds of exercises. And Burkina Faso also came up with what needs to be reinforced is that at the financial level, at the economy level, we need to continue raising awareness. And we also need to build capacities with regard to various tools, which need to be better mainstream, better integrated. And of course, we need to figure out how all of this is going to be financed. We've also developed an advocacy and communication strategy, which helped us to involve ambassadors into this process. On the 15th of November, we're going to meet with the ambassador and can discuss organizing a governmental seminar so that this poverty environment initiative can be better integrated into national planning. Another thing that must be said is the Fund for the Environment, which is being established so that all stakeholders can pool their energies and we can take action on the ground in order to address the concerns of the population, because we are acting as a catalyst, but we also need to implement these initiatives. In addition to all this, what's extremely important to note is that we need political will, strong political will, and we need support from all partners at the bilateral level, at other levels. All donors also need to take an active part. So this can be a long-term program. Of course, you need to be very open to this initiative and you need to be committed over a long period of time. Sustainable development needs to benefit communities by addressing their needs. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Marie-Laetitia Boussoquet for the Rwanda experience and tool.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to be very brief. As for the first question, what is the tool you find has been most useful for mainstreaming environment and poverty issues? For Rwanda, the public environmental expenditure review has been very instrumental in terms of mainstreaming environment and climate change issues into national frameworks, planning frameworks and budgeting. The PER has showed us how much money sectors are spending. And what we have noted is that the sectors that took much of the national budget are the most harmful. So we selected, with the support of PI, those sectors as the first, to focus on in terms of mainstreaming. And this brought us to introduce an internship program which is meant to help those sectors mainstream environment and climate change issues into their plans and budget. Second, the PER has showed us also how the districts, this is local governments, private sector, but also civil society organizations behave in terms of environment and climate change mainstreaming. This helped us to bring them on board so that we could work together and avoid duplication. Third, the PER has showed us what is the financial gap in terms of mainstreaming, in terms of supporting environmental sustainability, but also sustainable development and poverty eradication. And this brought the government to create the Fund for Environment and Climate Change, what we call in French FONERWA, le Fonds pour l'Environnement au Rwanda. So this fund is an innovative mechanism that will help us to access national and extra budgetary financing and international financing so that we can support a sustainable development project and poverty reduction. And so PER has very been useful. And fourth, PER has helped us to, by working with the Ministry of Finance, to introduce, and the budget called circular. The budget called circular is the guidelines given to all budget agencies for preparation of annual and MTF budget. So in the budget called circular now, we have an annex which prompt all the sectors to mainstream environment and climate change and their annual budget and the MTF. So PER has been very instrumental in terms of mainstreaming. Coming to the expertise available in Rwanda, knowledge sharing, experience, I can say that, as my friend for Burkina Faso put, we have seen that in Rwanda, working with the Minister of Finance is key. If you begin by the Minister of Finance and understand the problems of environment and climate change, you are sure that mainstreaming will be very successful. They are the ones who have money. So if they understand, they will give money to other sectors who are polluting or harming environment. Another experience to share is that we have to move from policy to implementation on the ground. So we have implement demonstration project, ProPoor projects, where we have added value by bringing the components of environment and climate change in already existing program targeting the poor in Rwanda. So we have now green and climate resilient villages, so we can share this experience with other countries here. And third, another experience we have to share is the internship program. This has been very tremendous in advancing the mainstreaming agenda into sector programs, sector plans, also budgets. They have been there, they have been trained, they have been given guidelines on mainstreaming, identifying the key issues in different sectors, guidelines with indicators to track, the progress in implementing activities to cope with environmental and climate change issues. So this also is an experience that we can share. And finally, what do we need from others? While conducting PER, we've seen that we need to broaden the classification of environment function because it was not so easy to capture some expenditure which are meant to be on environment. Another thing is that some activities are meant to protect environment, but they also contribute to climate change adaptation. So how do you avoid double counting? So I think helping us with the expertise to create climate budget codes with clear indicators will help us to avoid the double counting for actions that give benefits to environment, also coping with climate change issues. So I think what UNDP can help is really also to commission exchange visits so that we can share all those experiences. And we need also, in terms of putting value on environment, we need expertise in economic valuation of ecosystem services. They are very important for sustainable development for the poor, but we need to put money on because they don't have market value. So it will help to maintain them and manage them sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for It's very clear expose on Rwanda and what Rwanda has to offer and also what it needs. I'd like to give the floor now on another very successful example, which is on climate public expenditure and institutional review, the case of Nepal.
Thank you. I am going to be very brief. To maintaining, for mainstreaming the climate expenditure in planning, we started the work with when we are drafting 12 plan in 2010. At that time, we made climate resilient planning framework, screening tools for project prioritization. That after we conduct a meeting. And then after we conduct a meeting with UN resident coordinator, and we decided to climate to study on climate expenditure, public expenditure and institutional review in the 2011. And from that, from its result, it recommended that some budgetary tools we have to adapt. So after the budget making process of 2012, we use climate expenditure budget code. I think we are the pioneer of the world. In this budget code, we have it is being a tool for planning as well as a little bit in macroeconomic modeling also. Regarding first question, the budget code it help us to establish and we enable us to different what is the climate expenditure and what is environmental expenditure. We can differentiate it from each other. Second, we have increased understanding within the ministry. Before that, we can't. We have no the clear-cut understanding about climate expenditure. Third one is budget code help us to evaluate and distribute the scarce resources. And fourth one is climate budget could help to monitor the trend of climate expenditure and it help us to analyze the gap in budget climate expenditure. So it is being a very useful tools for planning. And going to second question, it is we have just 3 year experience, 2.5 year experience. So we have very little about to share our expertise. One is that developing criteria and monitoring from developing criteria and method for climate coding. We have 11 criteria for climate expenditure budget code. So it is our experience. And we have another experience on that. One of the project criteria tools is climate expenditure. We have 9 criteria for project prioritization. We have 3 types of project: priority 1 project, priority 2 project, and priority 3 project. So one of them, the total composite value is 27. Out of 27, 3 is going to for climate expenditure. And another experience is that we are success to integrate the planning and programming, macro level or sector level. We have some we have some we need we need some expertise outside the country, like UNDP and other development partner, because we have some challenges, like how to localize the tools in the local level institution and private sector. Is captured only in government expenditure. So how to institutionalize it? So we have many potentialities, being a mountainous country, and we have some challenges. We have I request to enhance understanding and sharing best practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've just heard 3 different examples, 3 different country experiences, which were all supported also by the PEI. Now there's one initiative, a UNDP-supported initiative, the ART initiative. I would like to give the floor to the Mayor of San Jose, Mr. Mario Martinez.
Buenas tardes a todas y todos. No quisiera iniciar sin antes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the organizers of this event. And I'd also like to thank Kenya for the hospitality we've been offered. In brief, I'd like to tell you that we traveled for over 23 hours to get here, but it's a true pleasure for us to meet here with you today on the other end of the world. I'd also like to tell you about our development association, our local development association. From the outset, we asked for the UNDP and for local partners in our country to pinpoint the needs and the priorities of our department. Following these studies, our General Assembly, in other words, the private sector, local government, various entities, we decided to call ourselves the Local Development Association. It's local economic development I'm talking about. A country, a people cannot develop if they don't improve their education, their health, if there's not an environment, if the environment is not conducive. And thus the UNDP provided us with the opportunity to have a very positive experience in the Dominican Republic. I was part of the delegation, and we saw this firsthand, the experience of our association. For instance, coffee growers told us about this. Cocoa growers. They produced cocoa beans without polluting. They did not use any fertilizers and such. We also visited other sites in the Dominican Republic very quickly, and then we came back to our own country, and we figured out what we need to do within our association. And this is how we started advertising our services. We started talking with various partners. Of course, the UNDP provided us with the necessary support. And thus, together with various ministries, we began working on health and education. We looked for ways of involving legal experts, and we obtained the support of the government, of the Minister of the Economy. And therefore, we managed to help our community, small and medium enterprises, and we strengthened their capacity. And that's how things happened. We managed to build up our association, and today it is flourishing. Of course, we have our work cut out for us. But we got off to a good start, and I think it's a good association. All of the actors involved take part in the decision-making at all levels. Now, the second question, which I've been invited to address, has to do with local and national development, and of course also global. I won't simply talk about my municipality, of course. We have a Ministry of the Environment, which has assisted us. And thus it was possible to mainstream our approach in local economic development, all the while taking into account the fact that our economy cannot have a positive impact unless we also preserve the environment. Of course, in cooperation with various ministries, the Environment and the Finance Ministry, which train experts, which can work in various sectors. I'm in particular referring to women's associations, fishermen's associations. Our government should take into account all of these aspects to help women, young people, to mainstream all of these aspects.
The third question is, what are we claiming to manage to do? After the first 2 points, I'd like to state that what we are doing as an association for local economic development, and what we are hoping for, is that in this region, if not throughout the world, that we have strategic alliances that are integrated for the smooth development of such good practices, so that we recognize we have limitations, but we also have great capacities. That is our people, and we know what it is that we are seeking. We can exchange with other countries the good practices that we've been able to set up in just a short time, and at the same time to learn from other communities what they have been able to do successfully. For example, it's a matter of pride what we've been able to achieve to develop our marine coast and avoiding any pollution in the environment by using organic means as we seek to recycle waste in households and other waste. We have a pilot program as our association, and it has been very successful. One part of the area under our local economic association has been declared by Japan, by JICA, as a model village, an example to be followed in El Salvador and in other countries. How did we do this? We were able to recycle plastic and metal, everything that we could. We kept it from our landfills and separated out plastics and paper so that we were able to recycle as much as possible inorganic materials. I would like to say more, but I have just simply wanted to sketch an outline of what the Local Economic Development Association has been able to carry out. We work under our town council, and if you would like us to explain better exactly what we're doing and where we want to get to, I would be very happy to do so. My nerves have got the better of me a little bit, but it's been a great pleasure to be able to interact with you in this dialogue. Thank you.
Very much. I think we've presented a bit too long. We have, Grace, is it okay if we take 10 minutes for gathering the questions? So I stick to 10 minutes for reactions from the audience. I'm going to suggest that if you have any questions that are clarifications to any of the panel members, I would hope you could address those at the table, at the Solution Forum tables after this session, since the purpose of this session is really to identify where are opportunities for exchange. So if you have any questions, I would hope that they are in that line. Where do you see opportunities for South-South cooperation, for exchange with any of these initiatives that have been presented? And you've seen, to summarize, that these are very different examples. The first one, Burkina Faso, went really strictly into the national development policies and plans and established separate funds. In Rwanda, there was a public environmental expenditure review, which led to the establishment also of an environmental fund to FONERWA, leading to demonstration projects and budget circulars. The Nepal experience is really about how do you define climate expenditures? How do you define environmental expenditures? How do you organize yourselves then in budget codes and in budgetary processes? And then the local economic development agencies, the example of El Salvador, is really a community type of initiative through an exchange with Dominican Republic. These people have found a way to organize themselves around and push the environmental priorities through their local economic development agencies. So these are very different examples. I open up the floor for any of those opportunities for collaborations that you see. Please introduce yourself also.
Yes, this is Dr. Odida Arian from the League of Arab States, ACCED. In fact, I really interested with the two presentations, especially Burkina Faso and Rwanda. Especially, I am really asking myself, because ACCED was doing a special monitoring for drought and land degradation and the combination effect of them on rain-fed agriculture. I see in front of me from the figures I have in my report that in Burkina Faso, almost 56% of the rain-fed agriculture is affected highly by severe drought and land degradation. And I see also that in Rwanda, 41% and 60% in forest areas. So 41% in rain-fed and 60% in forest area. Burkina Faso has 15% in rangeland affected. And agriculture share is very high in GDP. I really wonder, because this is a very important two examples, countries in Africa, where we can see land degradation and drought playing a big role for the stability of life. So I really wonder what kind of plans they are taking for the future especially to face land degradation, which is really increasing in these two countries severely, and the stability of the people working with rangeland and rain-fed agriculture, which is really uncertainty is increasing in these two countries with rain-fed. So this is what we can really contribute, that we can contribute with our data available at ACSED and Arab League for these two countries, and maps exist for all these two main phenomena, and we can really share with them ideas to that direction. But I would like to tell that the high stress in environment because of land degradation and the drought coming over it is really affecting stability in many places in Africa. And these two examples are very important for us to recognize. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could you repeat where you're working?
I am working at the Arab Center for Drylands and Arid Zones, ACSED, part of the League of Arab States. And this study was designed and made specially for the Global Assessment Report 2013, which has been published last May, and the document is in part of the documents of GAR, Global Assessment Report of UNICDR 2013. So I will be really interested if we can share our knowledge and the information, because this is our goal.
Yes. I think you should talk with the two panelists during the table session. I'll take another question. Please.
Thank you. More than a question, it's a comment, if you allow me, Mr. Moderator. It was a comment on Mario Martinez's intervention. And if you allow me, I would make it in Spanish so he can complement or correct me. Is it possible? Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I wanted to just complement with some information, because given the rather short time that Mario had to present his point of view, it was spoke mostly about the local level, which is where his agency is set up. But with just a couple more of pieces of information I would like to add to what was said. First of all, Mario mentioned the support of the environmental agency to the local development agency, and I would just like to say a little bit more on this and to share with you that where the Ministry for the Environment has supported the local development agency is in providing advice from the department in terms of technologies that can be ecologically friendly, and there are small businesses and enterprises that work in the environment but do not have ecologically friendly technologies or do not have the idea of sustainable development. So what Mario was speaking about was the support that was given to these small and medium-sized enterprises across the country in order for them to be able to integrate the issue of environment within their policies. And I think that's the key of the work of this agency, ADAL, to integrate sustainable development within economic development, because without that we can't have long-term development, particularly in El Salvador, where we have so many natural disasters that can mean that all of the efforts invested can be lost. At national level, this is what I wanted to say, but at international level, as Mario mentioned, the support of the exchange South-South development with the Dominican Republic, the program, and we will give you more details from the table on this, the articulation of how this is managed at human level is a platform for South-South cooperation as it's being supported by the national levels. It's possible to raise demand, the priorities at local level, which is what took place in the Union when we prioritized economic development as one of the priorities. And art has assisted, and UNDP has also assisted us with information, but also on the basis of these priorities that were identified, it found in other countries of the South where there was the expertise that could be shared in such a sphere. And as Mario mentioned, we saw that in the Dominican Republic there was an experience at local level that had allowed us to mainstream economic development with the environment And it was on the basis of this that it was possible to make the exchange. The physical exchange is one thing, but afterwards the most important is the follow-up and how we are able to have an alliance in the long term and to adapt the model. And I am going to conclude here, and to adapt the model to the realities in El Salvador. And this is where ART was also able to accompany the stakeholders at national level to adapt the model and to make sure that it was possible to carry this out in El Salvador. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Winnie. I'm an intern in UNDP. I'm a PhD student in University of International Business and Economics in China. And my question is about another lower level of how we could eradicate the poverty. My concern is on individual level. Because we know if international organization or government would like to utilize our tools or methodologies to do something for poor people, but our management is long chain, so sometimes there are some waste during the process. So I'd like to mention why we don't consider to develop a tool or approach to involve more individuals could to do that. Like for me, myself, I'm doing a test on a local person. Just like that, I think first one, we'd like to involve more individuals to come into a green economy and poverty eradication. And the second one is that how we could involve them, because we need some material to persuade them they could do for themselves. I think for individual level, they have a lot of advantages compared with international level or national level. The first one is that the soft information. For individual level, we could collect the soft information very easily. They just work close us, and maybe they are our neighbors. It's very easy. We could collect this soft information. So based on this soft information, we could monitor our fund or our donations they utilize. And also, I think these actions during the interaction between the donor and the beneficiary, between these actions, like young people, like the children, the children in the rich family, maybe they could learn more by these actions. But also there are some challenges for doing this, because more and more rich people, sometimes they like to do more for the society, but firstly they don't know how to do it, what kind of mechanism they could utilize, and they prefer to give the opportunity to poor people to their fund to help them to learn how to fish, not only give them the fish. So I think for UNDP, whether we could consider to do some research, we develop a methodology for individual levels. We could do more for this poverty eradication. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going over time. I would, in order to close off, I think it's important if the two of you may be doing a final response to the question there, because there was a clear opportunity for some collaboration.
I think that with regard to the land degradation in Burkina Faso, we are dealing with improving our rural areas, and we also have some partnerships for improving our soils. And this is a program that is dealing with local techniques that need to be strengthened, and also with innovative technologies. Beyond this, we had the Division for Information and Monitoring for the Environment, which is working with the Sahara Sahel Observatory, which to date we have some installations that allow us to have satellite information over 10 years of the vegetation cover, of our water resources, etc., which allow us to be in a better position to take decisions. And in the same line of thinking, the combating desertification has become a high priority at national level, so that the activities of reforestation and protection of the land involve the head of state at the highest level and the assembly. And every year we do our best. We're a Sahelian country. We are reforesting wherever we can. And each ministry has to plant at least 1,000 seedlings every year to combat soil degradation and climate change. Moreover, there are activities that are taken individually and at local level. We have techniques that have been proven, carried out by the local population, which we call Kodomporo, which is the local level of this. And we also have institutions, and through this division, I think we were able to work with you, and we would like to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. In Rwanda, it's real that land degradation is a very huge problem, but the Ministry of Agriculture, with the support of Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, are striving to really include environmental sustainability and the agriculture programs. The agriculture programs have undergone strategic environmental assessment to see how we can cope with the environmental issues, including land degradation. So there are many programs and the strategy for agriculture transformation, including crop intensification, approaches like sustainable land management, where you manage soil and water sustainably, are key and are invested in. Coping with soil fertility, because with also the hilly terrain with runoff, etc., there is soil erosion. But there are also other programs like we have, it's like a poor program also, but which is benefiting of agriculture, is one cow per poor family. So it helps also to increase of fertility. So there are also a program of land consolidation, where the farmers put together the land, and then they can invest more in more. It is easier for them to access a technology for sustainable land management. So this is some of the approaches and programs that are put in place in Rwanda to cope with land degradation.
Thank you very much. I'm going to close this session for now. I know that some of the questions have not been answered. I invite you to come, in the sake of time, to come to the solutions table, then we can talk further. I think your experience will be very interesting to discuss with, particularly with the UNDP China country office. Grace has worked there and maybe can give you some references. Rest me to say that under the PEI, the Africa and Asia teams are working very closely together on the very good experience of Nepal on the climate public expenditure and institutional review. We're working on, there's already a draft proposal, and we're going to work together with the South-South Cooperation Secretariat to see how we can bring that all together and maximize the South-South cooperation in that. Also for those people that sit here and would like to go to the Solutions Forum table, there are very good examples in a publication we've made, Stories of Change, which are very clear examples on what poverty environment mainstreaming can do in a country. And there are some examples in Building Inclusive Green Economies, a publication just released by UNEP. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kon, and thank you very much for the discussant. Now let's move on to the second session. I would like to invite Mr. Keishan Kodai, Regional Practice Leader for Energy and the Environment in UNDP Regional Center in Cairo, to be the moderator. Keishan, I leave it to you to introduce your distinguished discussant from India, Kenya, and from Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. And I'd like to invite our next panelists up to the stage to join me. So thank you very much. We have a very exciting panel now with two very important case studies. As Grace mentioned, one that's very close to my heart with the tea sector in India, and another one related to social forestry in Kenya, but also in other countries in Africa through the process of South-South cooperation. So let me quickly introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist, Mr. Michael Mukolwe, who's with the Kenya Forestry Research Institute here in Nairobi. And he's been engaged in social forestry work both here in Kenya, but also their institution has been active cooperating with 20 other countries across Eastern and Southern Africa on social forestry. A very important case of social empowerment and the connection between productive sector, productive capacity as a tool for social empowerment and income generation. Our second panelist, Mr. Janucci Hanai, is a senior representative at JICA here in Nairobi. And he has expertise in the area of rural and agricultural development in sub-Saharan Africa, and has been a very strong supporter. JICA has been a very strong supporter of South-South cooperation for the social forestry initiative across Africa in over 20 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. And to my right is our colleague, Mr. Swati Bogle, from a senior technical advisor to the Tea Board of India. And she has almost 20 years of experience working on technologies, innovation, and ways to have this achieve goals of social empowerment. And particularly the very impressive case of bringing the benefits of energy efficiency, renewable energy to the tea sector in southern India, and the important goals of social empowerment that have resulted. So without further ado, we have the next half hour to discuss with our panelists these two very important cases, and maybe I'll start with the first question. And I'll ask you, Swati, can you introduce to us what are the key success factors in your initiatives related to South India's tea sector, and how this has brought goals of poverty reduction, sustainability to the workers, to the companies, to the communities?
Yeah, I can do that. But very briefly about the project, just to set the context right. It was a project designed for energy efficiency in the tea factories. The methodology adopted was about awareness creation, enormous amount of data generation, elimination of financial barriers, adoption of energy efficient equipment, and building local capacity. We had conceived of the project in the UNDP as saying that we will demonstrate 30 factories, and we would demonstrate 56,000 tons of CO2 saved. But the approach of the Tea Board of India was different. They told us that you are here to reform a sector and not to show some interventions adopted by 30 factories. So we had sort of changed the strategy of the project to meet with the requirements of the Tea Board of India. And I think that was a very opportune suggestion at the very beginning of the project. And instead of working with 30 factories, we have shown adoption of energy efficient equipment, 200 factories. We have more than doubled the CO2 emission reduction, and we have tripled the investment made by the sector in adoption of energy efficient equipment. Key success factors for these are, I think, the way we created awareness and information sharing. We went to every factory and, informed them about the project, gave them what information they required, and we always responded to their needs. You must realize that the tea industry is located in very remote parts, and they are generally cut off from what's happening. Energy is a sector that the planter does not understand, and so there was a lot of skepticism to be overcome, which we did with awareness creation. The other thing that worked, although it was a very difficult balance that we had to do, was that we had a multi-stakeholder engagement strategy. We were working with the government, we were working with industry associations, with research institutions, and with civil society organizations. So managing all these people with divergent views and opinions, I think was a challenge, but it was very important that we do that, because the richness of the diversity and the approach to problem solving was very, very important, because everybody had a common goal. The other thing, as mentioned by the chairman of the tea board, as an indicator of success, was our strategy of bringing outside experts. He told us that the tea industry always relied on in-house experts, but when you bring in outside experts who understand energy and who took the trouble to understand the tea sector, that is where was the key element of change. That was the analysis of the tea board. And so they want the same team to replicate the project in other parts of India. The other issue one was about processes and methodology. We knew that we had to work towards confidence building in the sector. So we started off with recommendations that were low investment, low risk. And once people believed what we were saying, we went on and took them forward to high investment, high energy saving recommendations. And that's how the money investments in energy efficiency started flowing. Of course, a very competent technical team was key, because otherwise people would not have trusted us the way they did. I think very strategically, another point was our communication goal, which was to not just to inform and create data, but ultimately to show the planter that he is the ultimate beneficiary of all the project. So when he knew that the project was aimed at his profitability and at his factory modernization situation, they came on board. And when they said seeing is believing. And when they saw that, they trusted us, they built confidence, and most importantly, we were able to make the mindset change.
So I have just a follow-up question. I mean, I could see that the energy efficiency improvements in the tea sector, which are a big focus of the project, to some extent we could see the benefit in terms of creating greater efficiencies in the company through reduced energy footprint, and up to probably 30%, I think, energy intensity reductions through this project, which is a huge shift. I think about 20% of the costs of the sector or of the companies that were involved in the project have been saved. It's 20% cost saving. So the question then becomes: has the saved money just been diverted to purely profit rationales, or has it somehow been reinvested for the benefit of the companies, for the sustainability of the production, or of course for the workers, the communities? How is this 20% cost savings from the energy efficiency being reinvested for sustainability?
Yeah, I think they've been largely invested in sustainability initiatives. Not so much because the planter was committed to sustainability, that he was because of the project, but the tax structure in India. He would rather invest in factory modernization, in sustainability, than pay taxes. I mean, that's the honest truth, I'm telling you. So what they did was, the first year they would normally have invested in factory modernization, some critical equipment which they needed, which was stopping their production. But later, we were getting requests from the boards of various companies saying that help us to define the budgets for energy efficiency, energy conservation, And looking at the energy audit reports, we would tell them, this is the kind of budget that you should set aside for this equipment in your factory. So very factory-specific recommendations led to energy-efficient adoptions. Then the third stage was that we introduced them to renewable energy, again in a phased manner. Factories started investing in small hydro, run-of-the-stream hydro, where up to 1 to 5 kilowatt capacity. We told them that this kind of investment would take care of all your lighting requirements. They liked renewable energy because then it was recurring cost was zero and they had saved money. They also invested in energy plantations. Some of them invested in biogas plants. And very interestingly, we found, the tea industry, it became, some companies had tea and industry and started investing in briquetting units and other such units. So yes, they were investing not only in sustainability, but also in diversification. And last point, I found that they were, when they started giving gifts on festive occasions to their workers, they were giving gifts like smokeless wood-burning stoves or solar lanterns. This was definitely something different to the sector.
Very interesting. So it seems there was a kind of a domino effect from the cost savings from energy efficiency getting reinvested into further energy intensity reductions through renewables and other new technologies. So very interesting. I guess one last question I had reviewing this case study was the gender component. From what I recall, the majority of the workers that are harvesting the tea, as well as working in the production factories, are female. And so, what do you see as the key lessons in terms of women's empowerment in this process, beyond the pure economic cost savings and reinvestment, but the women's empowerment benefits of the program, and what role did women as leaders in the process, apart from yourself, of course, but
Yeah, I must confess I was the only woman participant in the whole management. It took some trouble for me to get the buy-in from the sector because they've not been used to women managers at a high level. Just to correct you, the thing is that the tea industry is made up of the plantation sector and the factory production sector. Plantation sector is largely women. The production sector is largely men. Because of the amount of automation that has happened in the sector, the women were employed only in the packing section. And so our intervention in this project was limited to the factories. But what we did was we persuaded the tea board through their other projects to start investing in women's welfare. I would love to say gender mainstreaming, but that is not a concept that the sector or the government understood very much. So we were happy by recommending them women's welfare. So we identified the problems women had in the sector, in the tea plucking sector, largely as extreme exhaustion, not able to spend adequate time with their children, which they desperately wanted to do, a little bit of poor response, poor acceptance of sanitation, and little bit of alcoholism among the men. So these were the sectors that we identified from the project, and then the tea board said that they would look at women's welfare measures, and they have started actively working with, asking women. The other interesting thing was that we worked with the labor unions, telling them that when such a large percentage is women, there has to be adequate representation of women in the labor unions, and also that the labor unions must take care especially of women's needs, which the unions now raised that issue with the Tea Board of India, and then we are finding that, we were able to get we made a recommendation, the Tea Board has made the recommendation to change the school timings or to stagger the tea plucking timings to suit women, either this or the other, wherever it was possible. And health facilities, ambulances, etc., have all been incorporated by the tea sector. Two questions remain unaddressed. I think one is the issue of sanitation, which I think takes a generation to change. And the other issue is about drinking. And I think these issues cannot be sorted out overnight.
Well, thank you very much. I think extremely interesting case and very valuable points. So we could see the clear important results of this particular project over several years when it comes to energy intensity reductions, but also the important social empowerment benefits that are coming through this process. I think on the screen probably there's some questions to consider, particularly what do other participants from the South see as benefits of this model for potential replication, for further questions about the case that you may want to raise at the moment. So please ask for any questions or comments from the floor on our first case study as to what do you see as the potential for replication in other countries in the South, in other sectors, beyond just the tea sector, of course, but maybe in other sectors that have to do with the productive sector in the food sector or otherwise. I think this is relevant in many countries that have tea sectors, of course, but also probably relevant to coffee, to other commodities, actually, green commodities in particular. So I'll open the floor to any questions. Please feel free. Of course, we'll have a tea break soon enough, but just to get your appetite revving, I'm sure you can explore further the tea sector. If not, maybe we'll come back to questions from the floor after we've come to our second case as well. So let us go straight now to the very important case, and maybe Michael, I would like to ask you about the very interesting work that you've done in concert with JICA and I think over 20 countries in Eastern Southern Africa over the past 20 years on social forestry. And can you maybe share some experiences about this initiative and how it's really benefited from what you've built here in Nairobi in Kenya, and how this process of South-South and triangular cooperation has succeeded over the last 20 years?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll share a response with my friend here. And I'd like to start by saying this. Forestry for the people, participatory forestry, are some of the concepts that have been used, or words that have been used to describe social forestry. However, in our context, in terms of development of social forestry, we look at it as a policy concept, a tool, perhaps I would say a basket of tools that is used to foster a rapid transfer of off-farm, that is trees on farm, not off-farm, that is when we look at close forests, woodlands and so on, into sustainable rural production systems. But this must be able to incorporate the biological, the socioeconomic diversities that prevail within an area. And also, it must also be responsive, when we talk about a social forest, responsive to the subsistence and development needs of the regions or our people, either in rural production systems or non-rural production systems, and must also take cognizance of the decision-making imperatives, because we are talking about governance. So that has been driving social forest development in Kenya, in Africa. Indeed, it is part of our life. It comes also as expressed in other concepts as farm forestry, village forestry, community forestry. It's part of our life in many ways. Then we find that we have 20 years of development cooperation. That's 2 decades social forest development in Kenya. And 19 years also of social forest development with other African countries. This started as a cooperation through grant aid development projects. Then it went into technical cooperation, and it has been the building block for the third country training. The results that we have realized over the years have formed the building blocks of the technical cooperation between Japan and Kenya under the third country training program, which is a South-South cooperation. Mr. Hanai? I could add more on that.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, as he mentioned, I think the social forestry is one of the most important approach in Kenya for forestation. And I think the first question is what is the success? And the next question is what is the remaining challenge in our South-South cooperation? I think that, you see, as he mentioned, we have 20 years history of cooperation between two governments. A baby born about 20 years ago, I think became adult now. It's a long, long time. And during this long time period, both government has kept the same policy. That is, social forestry is so important in semi-arid and arid lands in Africa, even in Kenya. So consistency of the policy is one of the key factors of our success. And the second is innovation and kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese meaning improvement. And not only South-South cooperation through triangular third country training program for the last 20 years, we devoted ourselves together to innovation of technology, like let's say nursery development, technology of planting and system of maintaining of forestry. So those innovation and kaizen are essential for the success of our South-South cooperation.
So thanks to both. I think it's really quite a success story over 20 years, over 20 countries, and building up institution here in Nairobi to lead this effort. So maybe one question I had on the innovation front. I noticed in the case study that in the recent years, there's been an attempt to connect it to the global framework for reduced emissions through deforestation and land degradation, REDD. And I was curious as to how that's been going the last few years, the work that's been built up on livelihoods and empowerment through social forestry over the years in communities, and how the connection to REDD, maybe some of the experiences the last few years in these 20 countries, or some of them that this may be a focus.
Thank you very much. Again, we have the backbone of what we are doing in RED, housed in one of our ministries, that's Environment, Water and Natural Resources. It's a focal point. But I would like to say that so far, local farmers have been accessing benefits. And these are coming in different ways in terms of ecological integrity. And then there are promises. There are promise of better livelihoods, promise of job creation, the promise of things like enhanced knowledge and skills. And on enhanced knowledge and skills, that I would like to say that our farmers have knowledge and have some skills. The only thing perhaps we need to do is to help them organize it. If we can help them organize it, then the promises that go on with RED are most likely to be realized. Okay, at the moment now we are working on what we are benefiting from is the voluntary scheme. But negotiations are still going on in terms of the regulated markets. We have some examples that are ongoing that is, of course, supported in a place you heard about Savo, so have national parks. So there is a corridor where we have these opportunities and benefits being realized.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what we've seen here are two cases where we see very clearly the strands of social, environmental, and economic strands of sustainable development coming together really with local communities on the ground. In one case, a very successful case of 20 years of South-South and triangular cooperation. In another case, I think extremely important potential for South-South cooperation in related sectors in other countries. So we have a brief period of time now to open the floor to questions and further discussion on these two specific cases. And of course, we're going to follow with the exchanges for even more detailed discussion after. But let's take the next maybe 10 minutes if there's anyone who would like to discuss with our panelists. Please, the gentleman on the left.
Thank you. My name is Robert Mwaniki from Kenya. I'm a food technologist and social entrepreneur. I come from the eastern part of this country called Mount Kenya, and specifically Embu County, where we have 4 tea factories. And from the presentation which the lady from India has made, I think most of those learnings can actually be translated and transferred to the Kenyan tea industry by just directly trying to do better energy management. So I think, because I'm very passionate about development of tea industry in my county, I will contact her after this so that we can get finer details and a way of directly communicating. The other additional point I would want to add separate is on the issue of value addition and post-harvest processing, which is really my area of profession. I've not heard a lot about how we can green our post-harvest processes so that we can minimize the losses. In Africa, a lot of hunger is attributed to spoilage of products and harvest after they leave the farms. Some of the technologies like drying using solar or other technologies which could be developed and may be supported and communicated by South-South cooperation would like to hear more about, and also value addition systems in the agro-industry, which is very important in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a great potential for us to share what we have done. Very clearly, some of the things that we can share is our method of doing energy audits. It's fairly standardized. We've done 100 energy audits in the tea industry. So that method of doing energy audit has evolved very significantly from the first audit till the last one. That surely we can share with you. But the other issue is that when we look at tea processing, there is a component of electrical energy and there is a component of thermal energy. Electrical energy largely goes into machines and electricity. So those recommendations would be by and large similar across all tea making countries and all tea making regions. But as far as the thermal energy interventions are concerned, I think they are very site specific. We need to look at the natural resources available there, and we can develop, that is a local, it has to be locally customized considering the needs. But let me share with you some of the data that we have collected. We looked at biogas generation for tea withering, and we found that it's possible if we have a good quality of biogas, because aroma is a very important issue in tea. We cannot spoil the aroma by using a biogas which is not 100% methane plus CO2. So that is one issue which we would have to consider. As far as solar is considered, we looked at solar air preheating so that we reduce the fossil fuel or the wood consumption in the tea industry. We collected data, we made an assessment, but we find that in areas which are very hilly, very misty, we looked at the hours of sunshine. And in that particular situation in South India where we worked, we found that the energy, we could get about 5 to 10 degree increase in temperature because of solar air preheating. But that was sort of negated by the energy required in pumping when blowing the hot air to the factories, to the burners, So somehow we found net not very, in our situation, not very positive approach to solar energy. But we think that in areas like Assam, where the potential for solar energy would exist. So we need to do studies and then assess that part of it.
So colleagues, the floor is open once again for further questions or points of discussion before we move on to the exchange roundtables. Last call. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much to our panelists and to everyone. And now we'll move on and I'll pass it back to Grace.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Kishan, and thank you very much for the 3 distinguished discussants. You are very good about time. We finished right on time, not finishing yet, but we finished the chat show 2 right on time. So the next session, we will, as I introduced before, we will make this more interactive, and I know that there are already some concrete ideas in the making, so that is very good. We have set up 4 exchange tables, and you will see at that corner is the PEI initiative, and you have heard 3 solutions from the Poverty Environment Initiative, which are aimed at mainstreaming poverty environment linkages into national and subnational development planning and budgeting processes. There are many important approaches and tools presented, and we already hear concrete ideas of how these tools and approaches can be further exchanged through South-South cooperation. So if you're interested into further discussion about that initiative, please go to that corner, but not yet, after I finish. And also we will have another corner for this local economic development UNDP art program that is supporting local governments to mainstreaming environment and to develop, to have local development agencies and local development plans. As Sebastian said, this will provide a platform for generating and collecting demands at local level and matching with expertise. So I think that is a very promising architecture for you to further explore possibilities. And also we hear the wonderful case study from India about tea sector, how to make energy efficiency initiatives. And I really appreciate the speakers, very candid attitude about not only showing you the successful lessons, but also showing what are the challenges. I know there are many countries presented here actually have similar sectors or issues in related sectors on energy efficiency movements, so a lot of exchanges can happen at that corner. And here by the window is the exchange table for social forestry initiatives in Kenya and supported by JACA, and that has already spread out and scaled up in East African countries. So if you're interested, and then this is the further discussion. But before doing that, I'm very glad to say that our organizer, the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, is recognizing all the solutions submitted and discussed just now. So the speakers will be recognized for their strong commitment, a special contribution, and also their personal championship to promote South-South and triangular cooperation. I would like to invite Mr. Yiping Zhou, who has personally lead and spearheaded this South-South Expo, and his team has organized the whole event to make this possible for us to present the award to the speakers. to the solutions that we just discussed now. So the awardees of this award will be, the first one, Mr. Rasman Kwidrago from Burkina Faso. Unfortunately, he has to catch a flight. But Mr. David Smith, PEI Africa Manager, will be, on his behalf, receive the award. Yes, please. Yes. Yes.
So the camera.
Okay, yeah. Now we would like to grant the award to Ms. Marie Letitia Busukeye from Rwanda.
Thank you, Congress, ma'am.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
So, Mr. Gopi Manali from Nepal. Yes. Mr. Mario Martinez from El Salvador.
Thank you, congrats.
Sebastian, come join. Okay, and Ms. Swati Bagul from India.
Thank you so very much.
Now, Mr. Junichi Hainai from Jakarta. Here. And Mr. Michael Mukulwe from Kenya.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We have more?
No? Yeah, we would love to have more, yes. Thank you very much, Yiping. Yeah, so now we have another 30 to 40 minutes because we won't need a simultaneous translation for the tables. Yes, the next session will start at 4 o'clock, so you can spend a little bit more time at the solution tables. Again, here is the PEI table. Here's the local economic development, and there is the energy efficiency, and here's the social forestry. The speakers will be there at their table to interact with you, and please, I have already provided with the speakers a worksheet. We would like you to focus on what are the similar relevant challenges you have met in your context, and what solutions you would like to exchange. And if possible, let's leave our contact with the speakers and try to, after the conference also follow up to formulate some specific opportunities for cooperation. Yes, and at the end, I hope I will be able to collect some concrete ideas and to share with you in a very brief remark. So now you can choose to go to any table that you would like to further explore. Actually, we have 30 to 40 minutes. I will also, announce in between so that you will have opportunities to explore at least 2 tables to have an in-depth discussion. Okay? So the PEI colleagues, you would like to hold, to be at your table? And also the Mario and Sebastian? I think we need to be quick, otherwise they will just leave. Yeah, so please, Swati, at your place. And also there are posters that already, set up the background information of those projects. Sebastian, so that is the local art, local corner. And here is the India Dennis. Can we have? Thank you. You're welcome. So can we ask this? Can we ask you to move to your table to discuss so that others are also waiting there? Yes, please. Yes. Come, don't leave. Further discuss there.
We'll go there.
Yes. Yeah. Swati, I see people already waiting at your table. Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm from the interpreters upstairs, so we understand that you're coming back for...
No, that's fine. No, you can go away.
What about the conclusions?
The conclusions, I will just do it very quickly in English, a few words.
Just a few words. So you don't want this team to wait, because we can wait.
Yeah, you can wait?
Yeah, because we are booked from 1 o'clock, so you have 3 hours with us.
Oh, okay.
So we can work up until 4
Thank
o'clock.
you. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So what I can tell my team is to come back to the booth at 10 to 4.
No, in about 10 minutes.
Just 10 minutes?
What time is it?
I make it, according to that clock over there, it's
Oh,
just past 3.
3:30. Yeah. Come back there. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.